What are your plans after you graduate? Maybe it's landing a great job opportunity, or it could be enjoying a high quality of life. If so, then Canada could become your forever home. Through completing your Canadian education and gaining work experience, you are well placed to apply for permanent residence. We just don't want you to study here. We want you to stay and continue building your dreams in Canada. My name is Brendan Rafferty, and I'm an outreach officer for IRCC. Welcome to today's presentation on Journey to Permanent Residence in Canada for international students. In this presentation, I'm going to outline your journey from being an international student towards becoming a permanent resident in Canada. Before I begin, I'd like to point out that this presentation is also available in French. If you'd like to receive this presentation in French, please contact your international student advisor. Please also note that the topics covered in this information session are updated as of December 6, 2022. As a reminder, policies and programs are subject to last-minute changes. That's why we encourage you to check IRCC's official website regularly for the most up-to-date information. In today's information session, I'll be going over the main information you need to know in order to apply for permanent residence. We will talk about how an international student can transition from full-time study to full-time work after graduation. I'll also cover some important immigration concepts, and then I'll show you how express entry can be your pathway to permanent residence. I also want to point out that almost all of the text in today's presentation acts as a hyperlink. This presentation has already been shared with your international student advisors. Once you receive it, you'll be able to click on the hyperlinks and they will bring you to the web pages with more information on a given topic. Now that you're in school and have your study permit, let's discuss working while studying in Canada as an international student. So, if you are now taking courses in an institution and you have your study permit, let's talk about the possibility of working as an international student while studying in Canada. Gaining work experience in Canada will be an advantage for you, especially if you want to apply for permanent residence. This is a criteria required by most economic immigration programs. Before working, you will need to carefully review the conditions that are directly printed on your study permit to ensure that you have the right to work in Canada. The first possibility to work with a study permit is to find a job on campus. There is no limit to the number of hours you can work on campus. However, many post-secondary institutions have their own internal regulations which limit the number of working hours possible for students. You can work on campus as long as you are a full-time student at a public post-secondary institution, that you have a valid study permit authorizing you to work on campus, and that you have a social insurance number, also called a SIN, issued by Service Canada. Regarding work off campus, you should know that in some cases, the number of hours of work you can perform will be limited. During regular school terms, you will normally be allowed to work a maximum of 20 hours per week, other than during scheduled holidays, such as winter and summer holidays, and your fall and spring breaks, where you're able to work an unlimited number of hours. That said, as most of you are probably know or aware, IRCC currently has a temporary measure in effect for the period from November 15th, 2022 to December 31st, 2023, allowing students who meet the criteria to work more than 20 hours per week. Since this measure is case-specific and based on several factors such as study permit application dates, the expiration date of your study permit, I strongly suggest that you consult IRCC's website via the link on this slide to see if you are eligible to work more than 20 hours per week. You can also reach out to your international student advisor as well. When it comes to working off campus, you can do it without a work permit if the following conditions apply to you. You have a valid study permit authorizing you to work off campus. You're a full-time student at a designated learning institution. You are not enrolled in a general academic or vocational post-secondary program. Your study program lasts at least 6 months and leads to a diploma or certificate. And you have started your studies, and that once again, you have a social insurance number. Finally, you can also work as an international student if you're enrolled in a co-op program. When work experience is an integral part of the curriculum for some programs, if you fall under this scenario, you can apply for a co-op work permit, but only if you hold a valid study permit, that you must do a co-op placement as part of your study program in Canada. You have a letter from your school attesting to the need to undertake a professional internship to obtain your post-secondary education credential. And finally, that your co-op work term represents no more than 50% of your study program. There are currently opportunities for you as an international student would not need to apply for a co-op work permit due to the temporary measures IRCC has put in place, expanding off-campus work to over 20 hours per week. It's important to access our website via the link on this slide to see if you are eligible, or again, you can reach out to your international student advisor to determine your need to apply for a co-op work permit. So let's fast forward into the future to when you have completed your studies. What happens now? Once your institution sends you your letter of completion or your final transcript, you need to determine your next steps, and depending, you might need to stop working immediately unless you apply for a post-graduation work permit upon receipt of your letter of completion or final transcript. The next steps depends on the following scenario. Do you want to leave Canada? If yes, then you must leave Canada before your study permit expires or within 90 days of receiving your letter of completion or final transcript, even if your study permit is still valid, whichever of these scenarios comes first. Do you want to stay in Canada? If you wish to remain in Canada, then you must either be accepted into a new study program or apply to change your status to become either a worker or a visitor. Many of you will want to work following graduation, and many of you will be eligible to apply for a post-graduation work permit. A post-graduation work permit is a permit that is issued to recent graduates from eligible Canadian post-secondary institutions. This work permit is an open work permit, which means you can work for almost any employer in Canada. The length of the permit will be valid depends on the length of the study program you completed. For programs that are longer than 8 months but less than 2 years in length, we may issue you with a post-grad work permit for the same amount of time as your program length. So for example, if you completed a 1-year program, you may receive a work permit for up to 1 year. For students that completed educational programs of at least 2 years in length or more, we may issue you with a post-grad work permit that is valid for 3 years. And just to clarify, it is important to remember that when IRCC is determining how long to issue the post-grad work permit for, we will be looking at the length of the educational program, not how long it took you to complete the program. Something I like to highlight as well is that this document is issued once in a lifetime and cannot be renewed. If you plan on continuing your studies in Canada, it's important that you figure out when the best time to apply for this work permit. This may be now or maybe at a later date when you have completed all further educational programs you wish to pursue. In order to receive this permit, you must apply within 180 days of receiving written confirmation that you have successfully completed your education program. If you apply for a post-graduation work permit within 90 days of receiving written confirmation stating that you've completed your education, or before your study permit expires, whichever scenario comes first, you can begin working full-time hours immediately while we process your application. If your study permit is expired, You can still apply for a post-graduation work permit, but you will not be able to work while your application is being processed, and you'll also need to request a restoration of status. And finally, if you applied any other time within the 180-day period, like after the first 90-day period, you will need to wait for the decision on your work permit application before you can start working. Everyone has been impacted by COVID-19, which is why IRCC has implemented temporary easing measures for several aspects of immigration, including how we review visa eligibility, post-graduation work in context with distant learning as well. If you have done distant learning, please access the web links on the slide to determine if our facilitation measures apply to you. As I mentioned, we're going to talk about some important immigration concepts. The first concept to understand is ensuring that you always have valid status in Canada. As a temporary resident, your status is confirmed by having a valid visitor record, a study permit, or a work permit. It's important to note that a temporary resident visa or an electronic travel authorization does not give you legal status in Canada. These are documents issued to you allowing you to legally travel to Canada. If you apply to extend your time in Canada, there's a good likelihood that you may hold what we call maintained status. Maintained status refers to a person that has applied to extend their status in Canada before their current status expires. If this is the case, your current status will be maintained until a decision is made on the new application you submitted. This allows you to remain in Canada in the meantime. For example, if you hold a study permit and apply for a study permit extension before your current study permit expires, you have the right to continue studying under your original study permit until a decision is made on your extension. It's important to note that if you leave Canada while your extension application is in process, you will lose maintained status. This being said, if you would like to change your status in Canada, for example, to change from a worker to a student, you must stop working immediately once your status expires and wait for a decision on your study permit application. To avoid this, we always encourage you to apply at least 3 to 4 months prior to your status expiring. Many of you will also want to travel outside of Canada to visit family, friends, or simply explore another country. Before you leave Canada, I encourage you to review what is required in order to come back into the country. Depending on your situation, you may need to apply for a new temporary resident visa or an electronic travel authorization. Because the requirements vary, IRCC has created a Come to Canada tool, which will ask you a few questions about your situation, and it will let you know what requirements you may need. This tool is accessible from the hyperlink on this slide. Now let's talk about a tool used extensively in Canada's immigration program, the National Occupation Classification, also known as NOC. The NOC is an organizational system used by the Government of Canada to classify jobs. Think of it as a giant dictionary of occupations that are divided by a 6-category system representing training, education, experience, and responsibility, all needed to practice a profession. This is called TEER, T-E-E-R. Every profession, mine, that of the cashier at your favorite coffee shop, and all of your teachers, we all have a 5-digit occupation code attached to it. The 4 tier categories in the black box on the slide are the ones that will make you eligible for the federal permanent residence programs managed through Express Entry. These 4 categories are also those that generally require post-secondary education or experience in a skilled trade and are considered as high-skilled occupations. Even if you're not ready to apply for permanent residence, you should know what codes are required under the different permanent residence programs, especially for express entry. Now that you have some understanding of the NOC system, as well as its 6-tier categories, let's see the documents you may need to apply for permanent residence. So there are a number of steps to take before thinking of applying for permanent residence. To start, everyone must prove their language abilities by taking an approved language test. Language tests are used to determine speaking, listening, reading, and writing ability in one of Canada's official languages, English and French. Language test scores will be equated to the Canadian Language Benchmark, or CLB, which can also be found on our IRCC's website. An important thing to remember is that language test results must be less than 2 years old when you create your profile in Express Entry and when you apply for permanent residence. If you completed your highest level of education outside of Canada, you'll want to have an assessment to have your education recognized in Canada by getting an Education Credential Assessment, or ECA. For some pathways to permanent residence, it is more desirable to have higher levels of education. In these cases, you'll want to ensure that your highest level of education is recognized. An ECA needs to be completed by an IRCC designated organization in order to show what level the foreign educational program is equal to in Canada. Please note that you do not need an educational credential assessment for any Canadian degree, diploma, or certificate. Also, as mentioned before, most permanent residence programs require work experience. IRCC will refer to work experience requirements in terms of full-time and part-time hours required. IRCC refers to full-time work experience as being a maximum of 30 hours a week for a period of 12 months. This is equal to 1,560 hours in a 1-year period. Immigration programs will also recognize part-time work experience. In this case, this would be equal to 15 hours a week for a period of 24 months. If you're looking for employment, Job Bank is the official Government of Canada website that caters to both international students and employers. Job Bank is not only a platform to search for employment, the site also consists of a job matching service which can help international students such as yourselves to get in touch with employers who may be able to support you in your immigration process. Now that we've looked at some of the things you can do to prepare before applying for permanent residence, let's see how it all comes together with Express Entry. Express Entry is an online system that IRCC uses to manage applications for permanent residence from skilled workers. It is a user-friendly system that allows candidates to create a profile and, if invited to apply for permanent residence, allows you to submit your application electronically. International students are good candidates for Express Entry because of your age, education, language ability, Canadian work experience, and established community networks. Express Entry is a step-by-step process. The first step is to create an Express Entry profile. This profile is valid for 1 year, and it's important to always keep it up to date. Creating a profile is free and doesn't require either an immigration consultant or immigration lawyer. Once a profile has been created, those who appear to meet the criteria in one or more of the 3 federal immigration programs managed through Express Entry are automatically entered into the Express Entry pool of candidates. The system will automatically determine if you meet the minimum eligibility criteria for one or more of one of these 3 programs, based on the answers you provide when you create your profile. When a candidate is accepted into a pool, they are given a comprehensive ranking system score, or CRS score, and they are then ranked against all other profiles in the pool. Top ranking candidates are then invited to apply online for permanent residence. On a regular basis, the highest scoring candidates will be sent invitations to apply for permanent residence during an invitation round. Only once a candidate has received an invitation to apply can they submit their application. If you have already submitted a profile but did not yet receive an invitation to apply by November 16th, 2022, you will need to update your profile with the new NOC 2021 tier category and its accompanying 5-digit code for your work experience. Since November 16th, IRCC will no longer be using the previous 4-digit NOC code. Now that we have a better understanding of the basics, let's take a look at the 3 federal programs under Express Entry, the first of which is the Federal Skilled Worker Program. To be eligible for the Federal Skilled Worker Program, you must have acquired at least 1 year of continuous paid work experience in an occupation corresponding to the level of work experience in the tier categories at level 0, 1, or 2, 0, 1, 2, or 3 over the past 10 years. Your professional experience counts, even if you are studying in Canada at the same time or if you acquired this experience abroad. In this program, language proficiency is at the high range. You must achieve a minimum level related to the Canadian Language Benchmark, or CLB 7, in each competency area assessed. In other words, your proficiency in French or English must be intermediate to advanced. The level of education required is a high school diploma or higher. This is the only express entry program where education is an explicit requirement. In addition, the Federal Skilled Worker Program has its own point system, which you must also meet. This point system takes into account specific information such as adaptability. Adaptability assesses the factors that will help you settle in Canada. The second express entry program is the Federal Skilled Trades Program. This program requires 2 years of professional experience acquired within the last 5 years in one of the occupations corresponding to the level of work experience in the NOC tier category level 2 or 3, whose occupations are listed on IRCC's website. Examples include electricians, welders, and restaurant managers. The language level for the Federal Skilled Trades Program are in a lower range, i.e., that is to say, a CLB level 5 for oral expression and oral comprehension, and a CLB level 4 for written comprehension and written expression. In this component, there are no specific requirements regarding studies, but having an education gives you a better chance of being chosen in the express entry pool during an invitation round. Finally, you must have a full-time job offer or a certificate of qualification in one of the professions corresponding, once again, to tier categories 2 or 3 of the NOC. The third and final express entry program is the Canadian Experience class. In the CEC, regarding work experience, you must have acquired 12 months of skilled work experience in Canada within the last 3 years. This professional experience does not need to have been acquired continuously. With regards to language skills, you must obtain a CLB level 7 if you have acquired your experience in an occupation corresponding to the level of work experience in categories tier 0 and 1 of the NOC. If you have work experience that falls under the level of tiers 2 and 3 of the NOCs, you only need a CLB level 5. For the Canadian Experience class, there is no educational requirement. However, having an educational credential can help you score more points, which increases your chances of receiving an invitation to apply. That being said, please note that any work experience gained while you're a full-time student will not count towards CEC required work experience. You must have acquired your work experience under a work permit, such as a post-graduation work permit, or a work permit tied to a specific employer. Now that we know a little bit more about the 3 federal programs, let's take a look at the point system that is used to assess Express Entry candidates. Once again, this system is called the Comprehensive Ranking System. The Comprehensive Ranking System, or CRS, is broken down into 2 categories. We calculate your core points and your additional points, each of which is out of a total of 600 points. These 2 groups of points will give you your total. The core points will take into account your work experience, educational level, language proficiency, and age. I'll discuss the additional points in a moment. If you're curious to see what your scores would be, you can visit the CRS the CRS calculator tool on our website. A detailed breakdown of how points are awarded are also available on IRCC's website. So once again, only candidates who have the highest CRS scores in the Express Entry pool and are eligible for one of the 3 skilled economic programs administered under Express Entry will receive an invitation to apply. The minimum number of points required in the CRS to obtain an invitation to apply varies. You can see the scores from the most recent rounds of invitation on IRCC's website. As you saw, 50% of your CRS scores comes from your additional points. These points are related to several factors. You can get up to 600 points by receiving a provincial or territorial nomination. All provinces and territory in Canada, except for Nunavut, administer their own provincial nominee program, and their websites would be the best place to find out more information on this. If you have a valid job offer, you can receive 50 additional points for a not tier 1, 2, or 3 position. Or if you have a valid job offer for a position that is at a not tier level 0, you may get an additional 200 points. I know I've said this before, but if you don't have a job offer, Job Bank is a great website that offers matching service. Employers will receive your Job Bank profile, and if it meets the prerequisite requirements of their job offer, they will be put in contact with you. This may increase your opportunity for finding a job in Canada. Completing a post-secondary education in Canada can give you extra points. You can get an extra 15 points for completing a diploma or certificate program of 1 to 2 years. Or you can get an additional 30 points for completing completing a diploma or certificate program of 3 years, a bachelor's degree, or a postgraduate degree. Your French proficiency will also give you 50 additional CRS points. French proficiency can boost your overall CRS score. So if you score well on your French language test, you can gain an additional 25 points. If you can also speak English well, you can gain an additional 50 points. Finally, if you have a sibling who's either a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, you can gain 15 CRS points. Now that we've discussed the point system, let's move on to the next steps. As I mentioned before, if you're among the highest ranking candidates in the Express Entry pool, you will receive an invitation to apply, and you have 60 calendar days to submit a complete application. The application and all supporting documents must be submitted electronically through your online account. If any of the documents you need to submit are not in English or French, they will need to be translated. A complete application means With limited exceptions, all supporting documents must be submitted with your application. You can start preparing these documents ahead of applying if you want to get a head start on the whole process, as sometimes it takes a while to get all the documents you will need for your application. I'll give you a moment to read the slide and get a sense of what is typically required for a permanent resident application. Remember that your express entry profile will expire after a year. If you still wish to be considered for express entry, you will need to create a new profile. As a reminder, if you've already submitted a profile but did not receive an invitation to apply by November 16th, 2022, you will need to update your profile with the new NOC 2021 tier category and accompanying 5-digit code for your work experience. However, if you received an invitation to apply before November 16th, 2022, you will need to apply for permanent residence using the old NOC 2016 system, which is a NOC 0A or B. Before we finish talking about permanent residence, I want to further discuss what funds are required in order to emigrate. As of April 30th of this year, application fees changed to $850 for the primary applicant, and this is the same for a spouse or common law partner, and $230 for each child. If you have a positive result on your permanent residence application, you will need to pay for a right of permanent residence fee, which also increased on April 30th to $515 for the primary applicant, as well as your spouse or common law partner. Additionally, for express entry applicants coming through the Federal Skilled Worker or Federal Skilled Trade Program, you must demonstrate that you have enough money to support yourself while you are in Canada. For context, a family of one will need to show they have just over $13,000. The larger the family, the higher the funds required, and these numbers can be found on IRCC's website. I'd like to point out that if you are living and working in Canada with a valid job offer, you will be exempt from this requirement for funds, since we know that you already have income in Canada. I want to take this moment to talk about the advantages of Francophone immigration. The benefits of Francophone immigration is not just for people whose mother tongue is French. People for whom it is a second language or who have a relatively good knowledge of the language can also benefit from it. As I mentioned before, French speakers can gain additional express entry points. These additional points may be the reason you receive an invitation to apply. In addition, for employers, you become an asset to them. French being one of Canada's 2 official languages, employers are looking to hire French-speaking candidates to better serve their clients and to tap into new markets both within Canada and overseas. Both employers and candidates enjoy the benefits of Francophone mobility. Francophone mobility allows eligible candidates who speak French to have access to work permits that are timelier and more cost-effective for the employer. In addition, many communities across Canada are ready to welcome French-speaking newcomers and their family with open arms. These communities want to ensure that you feel at home. For all newcomers in Canada, there are organizations across the country that are here to help you to adjust to your life in Canada. These settlement service organizations can help you and your family members find employment through interview training, employment counseling, and connection with employers who are associated with a given settlement service organization. You can also access information and courses on aspects of Canada you may not know. Examples include accessing healthcare, what laws and rights you have, educational opportunities, and more. There are also agencies that are specialized in providing support for Francophone newcomers as they integrate socially, economically, educationally, and culturally into their new home in Canada. Once you become a permanent resident, you can benefit from free English and French courses to improve your language skills and continue to establish yourself in your new community. If you're not eligible for express entry, there are other options. For example, you can gain more work experience through one of our main temporary resident programs, such as the Temporary Foreign Worker Program or the International Mobility Program. If not, you can see which other federal permanent residence related programs might be right for you. If you want to live in a particular area of Canada, the Atlantic Immigration Program and the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot may be programs that are right for you. Similarly, as I mentioned before, all provinces and territories, except for Nunavut, have their own provincial nominee program. But please remember that even if you obtain a nomination under a provincial or territorial program, it is not a guarantee that you will obtain permanent residence. You still need to apply for permanent residence through IRCC. To learn more about the topics covered by this presentation, IRCC's website is an invaluable resource when it comes to understanding Canada's immigration system. If you have any questions about your application, please do not hesitate to contact our Client Support Center, or you can use our online web form. You'll also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, where we share information updates that may be useful to you. As I come to the end of this presentation, I'd like to thank you for your time. Be sure to request a copy of this presentation from your International Student Advisor so you can review the hyperlinks on each slide. Thank you and have a great day.